we're going to go all the way south of the United States into South America. Look at that. We're going to go to El Salvador. So take us away, Brad Long. Glad to have you here.
Oh, so glad to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm going to do a little bit of a clunky transition and share my screen. And if you can see my screen, give me a thumbs up. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go to full screen here. So I'm not going to be able to see you guys if you're like making faces at me while I'm going through this presentation. But I want you to, if you would, for a moment, let me minimize that, is think about, you've been invited to stand up and introduce yourself in front of dozens of people. And this happens all the time in networking events. And this is whether you're an entrepreneur or you're an employee with a corporation. And, so you're on your way to this meeting and you're probably feeling kind of anxious and kind of not sure of what you're going to say. And then, you've just kind of put it off and put it off and put it off until you get there. And then, the anxiety really kicks in. So the question is, what if you could really just do away with all of that by formulating what I like to call the respectable elevator pitch? Okay. So today we are going to talk about how to formulate one of these. And so you're going to walk away with this today, knowing exactly how to craft a very short, pithy, punchy elevator pitch. So the next time somebody asks you to stand up and introduce yourself, you're going to know exactly what to say and you're going to be super confident. I wanted to also, if you have any questions about this process, this is actually a blog post and a video that I've done of this presentation. So there's a specific downloadable worksheet on here that will basically walk you through exactly how to do an XYZ statement or an elevator pitch. So you can just go to www.bradlong.co/XYZ. And everything that we're going to talk about here today is available for you to review there in case we don't get to your questions or any of that. So I wanted to introduce this idea of the honey badger, which is essentially just a proxy for your audience. The honey badger is all about, and your audience is all about, what's in it for me. And so we want to be sensitive to that. So I wanted to plant that seed. We're going to talk more about that in just a minute. So when it comes to an elevator pitch, what usually comes to your mind, right? You feel probably kind of clownish, like, hey, somebody's asking me to stand up and introduce myself. So typically we feel anxious, clownish, awkward, vulnerable, definitely underprepared because maybe we're not quite sure what to say. We're asking questions like, what if people don't like me? And then on the other side of this, the next challenge, once you figure out what your XYZ statement is going to be, is you're going to have to push through the fear of not wanting to look like a know-it-all. And so the good news is that everybody feels this way unless they're a complete narcissist, okay? So it's totally normal. Everybody has a fear of public speaking. And so this little formula is going to help you overcome that. So the solution to this is what we call the respectable elevator pitch. And so today we're going to this is basically what we're going to talk about today. Briefly, why we use the term respectable. Then we're going to jump into the nuts and bolts of the XYZ plus formula. I'm going to give you some very specific examples. So we're going to put some clothes on the skeleton, so to speak, so that you know exactly, okay, this is what this would look like. And then if we have time, we can kind of workshop it if you guys have questions, or maybe you have an XYZ statement that you formulated that you want me to sort of review on the fly. Okay, so why respectable? Okay. This really comes from a networking group that Wayne and I are a part of locally in Woodstock, Georgia. By the way, I'm in El Salvador on vacation. It's sort of like a working business vacation, but we're in a networking group together. And essentially the sort of philosophy of our networking group is kind of riffing off of John 13:35. They will know us by our love. Okay. So respectable looks like respecting time constraints, okay? And we'll talk about, more of the reasons why you want to stay within a 30-second time frame. So you want to respect time constraints. You want to respect your audience's brain space. I read somewhere recently that we're exposed to like 10,000 marketing messages every day. Now, I don't know how true that is, but I do know that we're exposed to a lot of marketing messages every day. So we want to respect our audience and be very short and very pithy about what it is that we're going to share. And then, we're essentially respecting our audience. We're respecting the honey badger, which is asking themselves, what's in it for me? Okay. So respect the honey badger, and the honey badger will respect you. Okay. So now let's turn this whole thing on its head for a second, because right now it feels like, oh, okay, this is kind of about me and it's about what I'm going to say and what I'm not going to say. But it's actually not about me. It's actually not about you. It's about making the message that you're going to stand up and deliver in 30 seconds crystal clear so the audience knows exactly who you're looking to be introduced to. So let me say that again. It's about making the message crystal clear so that the audience knows exactly who you're looking to be introduced to. And we'll come back to that in just a minute. So in our 30 seconds, we're not going to try to describe our services, describe our processes. This is a temptation that we have to really, really try to avoid. Describe our ideal customer. There's not enough time for that in this format. Okay. And so I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. The descriptions of your services, your processes, and your ideal customer, you want to save those for the introductions when you're doing your one-to-ones or your two-to-twos or presentations for referrals or introductions that you've gotten. More on that in a minute. Okay, the big idea. I'm a huge Nacho Libre fan, so I say, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Okay. What is an XYZ plus statement? What is that? Okay. So an XYZ statement is a very simple formula that's going to help you formulate a statement that says, I help X, which is a person or an organization, accomplish Y, solve a problem, a particular problem, Z, using a particular system or method, or could even be a product. Okay. And then plus is a great introduction for me is. Okay. So let's just workshop some of these, or let me show you some examples of what I mean by these. I've got 4 of these that I'm going to go to. So one that I'm using right now in my business is, hey, I'm Brad with Dopamine Drip Digital Marketing. This month, I'm helping life and business coaches close more salivating clients. So there's the problem that I solve. The method Z that I'm using is my dopamine dripping quiz funnel system. And then plus is a great introduction for me this month is your favorite life coach, psychologist, or therapist. So that's one example. Another example would be, and this is sort of an introduction, hey, I'm Elizabeth with the Intentionals. This quarter, I'm helping nonprofit leaders revitalize their organizational culture using our Flip the Script coaching system. And right now, a great introduction for me is the director of a nonprofit you're currently supporting or working with. Okay, so that's another example. And I know I'm flying through these. So again, if you guys have questions about these, this is just meant to get some meat on the bone so that you can sort of see some examples of what we're talking about. This is an example for a nonprofit organization. Okay, so hey, I'm Lori with Next Step Ministries. I help parents with adult special needs children regain balance in their life, the problem I'm solving, using our award-winning day programs. And again, Z is the methodology that you're using. This month, a great introduction for me is the parent of an adult special needs child who needs some support and encouragement. And then lastly, and this one might get me in a little bit of trouble. so I have to apologize in advance. This is a gentleman in our networking group who is part of a cremation society, and he is really, really awesome at adding a good amount of humor to what he does. So I'm sort of riffing off of the spirit that he uses to sort of present himself. Hey, I'm James with Neptune Cremation Society. I help busy adult kids of aging parents not get toasted by unplanned funeral expenses using our spicy Neptune salad stack. A great introduction for me this week is your financial advisor, because proactive funeral planning is estate planning. So those are some examples. So with that, and again, let me just go back to the actual formula itself. Again, your XYZ statement is, I help a person or an organization accomplish Y, which is a problem that you solve using Z, a system, method, or even a product. And then the plus is a great introduction for me. So let me go back through these real quick. Okay. So I love writer downers. So if you're taking notes, these are some really good sort of little tidbits, little pithy statements for you to sort of remember to kind of help etch these in your brain. You want to resist the overwhelming temptation when you're writing your XYZ statement to use the terms people, or anyone, or everyone, or someone, or any other kinds of generalizations. You want to be bold, You want to be very narrow and you want to be specific. I know that that's counterintuitive, but the more you can be bold and narrow and specific, the more you're going to, utilize the very limited attention that you have in your audience's brain for the best. It's okay to have an XYZ plus statement for each one of your client profiles. So many of us don't just work with one type of client. Okay. But if we try to get up and do an XYZ statement that encompasses all of the types of clients that we work with, then we're getting into the realm of I help people, or I help anyone, or I help everyone, or someone, so you want to have, if you do work with different client profiles, you want to have a different XYZ statement for each one of those. Okay. You increase your credibility when you lead with clarity, which leads me to my next statement. If you've never read the book by Donald Miller called Building a Story Brand, it's a really great read. And one of his sort of core tenets, if you confuse, you lose. If you confuse your audience, you're going to lose their attention. You're going to lose their trust. And so it's really, really important to, adhere to clarity. Okay, so let's circle back to this, and we're almost finished. Let's circle back to this honey badger idea. Okay, so the honey badger is your audience. So the way that you want to think about the honey badger is how the honey badger is thinking. Okay, so this is a networking meeting. This could also be your website. This could also be a landing page or your social media. So the honey badger, anytime they're getting exposure to you, they're thinking, okay, what is this? Is it for me? Does it help me solve my problem? And then in a networking context, they're asking, who can I connect them with? Which I will argue that that point, who can I connect them with, is really the most important part of an elevator pitch in the context of a networking scenario. And overall, their favorite radio station, we love to say, is WIIFM. What's in it for me? So we have to really think about our XYZ statement and everything that we do in our marketing and sales material from the perspective of our audience. And that takes a lot of work. Okay. So I'm not here to say that that's easy necessarily. So the honey badger, and I'm using horrible grammar here, the honey badger don't care about my title, my accolades, my experience, my qualifications. They don't care about that right now. Now they will care about that at some point, but we have to win their trust first, right? Okay. So in the 30-second context, they don't care about all the stuff that you've done or built or how hard you work or any of that. What they do care about is your ability, my ability to articulate who I help, to articulate the problem that I solve, and even more importantly, to be clear about who it is that I want to meet, who it is that I want to be introduced to. Some XYZ statement do's. Don't be afraid to be super specific. You can even think about one of your current clients or one of your current customers and craft your XYZ statement as though you're specifically speaking to that person. Economy of words is always appreciated. I know that we've all been to networking meetings where people are getting up and they're sort of stammering over their words and they're super self-conscious, and the way that they deal with that is just to talk and use a lot of words. And so if you can, when you can get your XYZ statement super short and pithy, that's an economy of words, and your audience will be very appreciative of that. I would say also ideate and role play in your one-to-ones. So if you're networking in a networking group, as you're sitting down to do your one-to-ones to get to know each other's businesses better, role play your one-to-ones. It's a really, really good little hack. Practice with a timer. Yeah, I mean, this is not an easy thing to do. Like, there is an art and a science to getting your XYZ statement down short, pithy, and clear in 30 seconds, right? Have fun with it. And then if you're here, I'm in El Salvador right now, but if you're in the Atlanta area, if you buy me a cup of coffee, like, I'll help you write your XYZ plus statement. I've been known to do that. Some mistakes to avoid, using corporate word speak, corporate word salad. And I think you can kind of ideate around what I'm referring to when I talk about that, like using super official sort of like marketing sounding language, and you want it to be short, you want it to be punching. Again, not rehearsing with a timer, adding random thoughts. Usually you're doing that because you're underprepared or unprepared or not super confident about your XYZ statement, going off script, and then definitely winging it. I mean, most of us are winging it when we're doing this anyway. With this, there is going to be there's going to be another temptation that you want to avoid, which is to get creative. So I always like to tell when I'm working with my clients on this, emulate before you iterate. Follow the plan, follow the X, follow the Y, follow the Z, follow the plus. Make those as short and as pithy as you possibly can. Then you can iterate. So there's a huge temptation to just try to get creative off the bat, and then you just wind up wandering off into left field. So I've seen that 1,000 times as well. So the balance with this, especially in the Christian community and Christian networking, is we want to have grace with each other, right? I am on the learning curve with this just as much as my clients and the people that I'm coaching. So we want to definitely adhere to this formula. We also want to have grace with ourselves, because we know that part of this iteration process is figuring out what's the ideal XYZ statement, or, maybe you have an inventory of XYZ plus statements. And so we want to have grace with each other. We don't want to be super legalistic about this. We don't want people to be so scared to get up and, deliver their XYZ plus statement, knowing that they're judged on every single word that they're doing. So we want to have, we want to season this with, some balance. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. Now, an extra little bonus that I have for you is that when you go through this process, your XYZ statement is actually repurposable across all of your marketing channels. So what you've just done, if you've done this exercise, is you've clarified who you're talking to, the problem that you solve, the way that you solve it, and who you want to be introduced to in terms of your ideal clients. So this is really kind of a side door way of clarifying your marketing message. So your XYZ plus statement is repurposable across all your marketing channels. And that means that you can use it on your LinkedIn profile, on all your social media profiles, on your website, and this is really going to help you speak to the audience that you really want to speak to. And it also applies to your offers as well. So again, respect your audience, and your audience will respect you. And just to review again, the XYZ plus statement is I help X, which is a person or an organization, accomplish Y, which is solve a very specific problem, using Z, a system, method, or product, and plus a great introduction for me is, okay? So again, coming back to this as we're kind of landing the plane, it's not actually about you. Having a really, really awesome, short, pithy, clear XYZ statement is not about you. It's about making your message so crystal clear that the audience knows exactly who you're looking to be introduced to. That's the biggest gift that you can give to not only your audience, but also to yourself. And again, we're not going to use our 30 seconds to describe our services, our processes, or ideal customers. There's just not enough time. And that's really not the point in this format. Those are for when you actually do those one-to-one or two-to-two connections, sales presentations, marketing presentations, et cetera, et cetera. And again, this is the downloadable PDF. If you go to www.bradlong.co/XYZ, you can download that and start workshopping this yourself. And with that, just wanted to kind of get a temperature check. How are you guys feeling? You feeling optimistic? Are you feeling overwhelmed? And then I just wanted to go ahead and turn it back over to Wayne for questions, comments, and smart remarks.
Okay, well, I'm gonna ask anybody that would like to answer Brad's question. How do you feel? What's your temperature? So we've got open access. Brad, I waited till you round up, and I just typed mine out. And so while you're thinking, if you want to jump in, I'm going to share with you what I just wrote. And you and I'd sat down before, so I put some thought into this over recent.
Awesome.
I said, I'm Wayne Odom, a Sure Connections volunteer that connects me with everybody on the call, so you know where we met from, and consultant to nonprofits. And I don't know if I'm edgy here on following your group. Then a consultant to nonprofits, helping them grow major gift development and donor acquisition. Maybe that didn't fit perfectly. I'm going to need to tweak that when I see you next. A good intro for me is any executive director, president, or board member of any nonprofit in the USA. That's what I shared, but I know I need fine tuning. But before I make another comment, is there anybody on the Zoom that has a question or a comment? Feedback?
Smart remark.
Yeah, Brad, that was so good. It was so simple and clear the way you have it laid out. And I mean, I've heard that I've heard presentations on how to give your elevator pitch and things, but yours is probably one of the better ones I've heard. Thank you. That was
I appreciate that. Thank
really,
you.
really easy to follow.
Awesome. Well,
So-
that was the goal.
Yes.
Nobody's narcolepsy kicked in. So that at least as far as I can see. So that's good.
No, we're all still here. Thank you.
Yeah.
I can see where
Gary?
this would be very beneficial for college students who are preparing for the workforce as they are beginning interviewing and stepping out from college to work. I'm going to share this with my guys, my two college guys as well, as they are entering into that phase and beginning to think towards careers, how to really sell themselves. They're not marketing a product, but they're marketing themselves to these potential employers. But I also was thinking this can be applied to the gospel as well.
Oh man, I was actually going to bring. Yeah, I was going to bring that up because I think one of the. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you did because I actually forgot. I forgot about that. I think one of the guys that does this so well is Ray Comfort. I don't know if anybody follows his ministry, Living Waters Ministry. He does such a great job of sharing the law and the gospel, which you can kind of look at the XYZ state. You can kind of look at the XYZ plus statement in, sort of in that context. And one of the things that he does really, really well is that he uses current event and does a little commentary on a current event. But then the rest of the video is him witnessing to someone, sharing the law and the gospel. And it's like every piece of content that he does, no matter what the title is, no matter what the hook is, it's really ultimately all about the sharing the gospel. So that's a really good point. And also, John, I think, sort of giving this as a gift to your college students, we're so inundated with so much information, and it doesn't take much to sort of separate yourself from the crowd, because most people, especially when they're younger, they're still trying to figure out all of what is it? Who am I? If you can walk into an interview or an interaction of some kind and be very, very specific about this XYZ plus statement, this elevator pitch, you're providing the audience, whoever that is, with an amazing amount of clarity, and they're going to respect you so almost immediately.
That's a great point, Brad. And I think the thing that you comment on, and I heard you share a little of your story in person a few weeks ago, and your outlook on the good news and being able to recognize, where we are as humans and needing, to repent and turn from our ways. But I loved something that you shared just in kind of making light of it. And you said, how many times have you been there in an audience and your eyes are running, rolling back in your head because you're thinking, okay, this guy's, he's going to need oxygen to keep going
land the plane.
Land the plane. And we've all been, sometimes a lot of us have been there. I myself a lot, where kind of like the Michael Scott quote from The Office. He says, I just started talking and I didn't know where to quit. I couldn't stop talking, and he didn't know where he was going. And so one of the things, that I think is great is having that formulated out front and knowing exactly where you're going with this. And when you and I were together recently, you had that piece of paper, actually 2 weeks ago today at the Innovation Spot, I could see your write out on there, and that was really good. And it takes time to craft that, so.
Yes, it is. It's hard work. And that's why, it's understanding the framework is one thing, but actually doing it is another. So, yeah.
Well, we're going to change gears a little bit since there are no additional questions at this moment. And I'd like for you to share, Brad, from a personal level, tell us what happened in your family after years of prayer and you having a walk with the Lord. What happened recently that's given you a great perspective and thankfulness to the Lord?
Yeah, that is an awesome setup. And it's amazing that I just had a conversation with my dad this morning. So I've shared with Wayne, I think I've shared with the group as well. One of the biggest joys for me recently is after years of sharing the gospel with my father and my wife and I sharing what the Lord is doing in our lives on a constant, consistent basis. He has finally come to faith in the Lord. He has absolutely repented of his sin. He has absolutely put his trust in Christ. And so now we're sort of walking through some discipleship right now. So we had sort of a discipleship call this morning, and it was just so sweet because it's just amazing how gracious the Lord is to us as, beggars, as, filthy sinners ourselves, giving us the opportunity to point other people to where the bread is, as I've heard it say before. And so it's just such an honor and such a heartwarming thing to be able to, now that my dad has recognized, what his status was, and now that he's put his faith in Christ, to look at what sanctification looks like, to look at what growing in the Lord looks like, to look at now, okay, how do I now conform my mind and hold my thoughts captive to the cross? Like, what does that look like? And so that's really where we are now. And it's just, those conversations are just unbelievably sweet. So.
That is awesome. And, we didn't pre-plan this a whole lot. We talked about these things before you left town and some by email. But if somebody were to have a relative or a friend that they have struggled with, they've waged a battle or a war in their mind, should I or shouldn't I speak to this person? One of the guys that you'll hear from that's in the room there, in our prayer leader for Sure Connections, is a guy named Don Taylor. And I caught the side end of this conversation, not the full conversation, but he was recently talking about an interaction where somebody with whom they'd had a long time relationship spoke to their friend and says, if I'd known you were a Christian years ago, why didn't you share that with me? It would have meant a lot if you told me, about your walk with God, years ago before I went through all this heartache. So what I was going to ask you, Brad, is if you wouldn't mind, would you just share what it means to have a relationship with Jesus and how that comes about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think just being in the spirit of being brief and pithy, I came to faith in the Lord through divorce. My first wife left me 6 months into our marriage for a friend of ours. And we had been going to church. I had been, ostensibly baptized, but I wasn't saved yet. I wasn't walking with the Lord yet. But the Lord used that horrible situation to show me. It's really kind of ironic that he actually showed me that I was capable of doing the exact same thing to her that she had done to me. And so like I said, it's a little ironic that, as I continued to go to church, and I believe it was Philippians 4:4 that the pastor was sort of exegeting that day, the piece, that passes all understanding. That was sort of the moment that I knew that everything was going to be okay, that the Lord I had asked him to forgive me of my sin. He forgave me of my sin. And that really started my walk. But I think the thing that's missing, I know this is kind of controversial to say in some, ministry circles, but the thing that's missing with a lot of the presentation of the gospel these days is that sin part. That is not comfortable for us to share with people. But the truth is that what we're ultimately being saved from is God's wrath against sin. And so Christ died for us so that we would not have to be punished for that which we deserve. And it was through that horrible circumstance that I was brought to the recognition of my own sin. And I was able to apologize to the Lord, turn from that, and completely put my faith and trust and hope in what Christ did on the cross. And so I think that's, you can't really share the gospel without sharing the law. I know that sadly, that seems to be controversial these days. I'm not really sure why, but that is the gospel. And, so certainly it's uncomfortable, but it's not our responsibility. We don't do the saving. It's the Spirit that does the work of the heart that leads people to repentance. And so our job is to just be obedient to God's word and preach the gospel to all the world, every creature, in love. And so that's a minute and a half a minute and a half explanation of how I came to faith in Christ.
Well, thank you, Brad. Thank you for, again, just being transparent, and that means a lot. And we're going to transition into introductions, and if anybody would like to share something, and I see Don is there in the camera, and so if you have a business, before I come to Don, I'm going to go to Carrie Stafford if she would like to introduce herself in North Carolina. And thank you, John, for putting 1 Corinthians 16, 3-4 on there. But Carrie, would you like to introduce yourself? And
Thank
then,
you.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Brad. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
I give my 30-second introduction every week at Women in Networking, which is a group that I lead, and I always change it up, but I'm going to get clear. I'm going to get consistent, do the same one every week just to get better at this.
That's awesome.
So I am yes, thank you. And I'm going to share it with the group too. I appreciate that. I am a small business and career coach here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And the problem that I solve is helping business owners and people searching for new careers get unstuck. So oftentimes we can just feel stuck and we need someone to help move us forward and bounce ideas off and brainstorm. And I'm looking to be introduced to other small business owners who are stuck and want to achieve their goals. They're just not sure how. So I'm going to get more clear on that.
Yeah, and if there's
just
time,
to quickly introduce myself.
No, that's great. And if there's time, I definitely have some suggestions for all of you guys. You know, just sort of like an impromptu sort of to workshop that, but only if we have time. So I'll be quiet now.
So